All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Plaza, and I am an education specialist. I'd really like to thank you for being here. We have quite a few things to get through today. The first literature review I wrote was in grad school, and initially I had no idea what to do. So I'm really hoping that you will enjoy this workshop or this presentation, and you'll have questions for me. So please write down your questions as we go along, because I'm here to make sure that you succeed. All right, so let's get started. So I always start off with objectives because I want you to know what we are going to cover today and what I hope we'll get through. So the objectives today is to have a better understanding of the existing research relevant to a particular topic or area of study. So this is going to be whatever topic or area of study that you're planning to write in your literature review. I want you to have a better understanding of that. And I'm going to show you how to get through that, how to find the research and the information. So to be able to present that knowledge in the form of a literature review. So again, we're going to go through how to write the literature review, the steps, and the format of a literature review today. Learn about important concepts and research methods that are used, and have a better understanding of how research findings are presented and discussed. So again, the presentation is designed to tell you something about what a literature review is and why you might need to write one and how to do so. Okay, let's keep going. So what is a literature review? So a literature review surveys scholarly sources on a specific topic. So what are scholarly sources? So in a literature review, students analyze critically and concisely earlier research and literature related to a particular research problem and utilize them for their own research purposes. So what this is actually saying is you actually go through previous research and you apply it to what your literature review is about. And we'll go into more detail as we go further along. You're also going to look at peer review sources, which are articles, books, anything that's a scholarly research that's scrutinized by others who are expert in the same field. So those, again, can be books, articles, newspapers, and websites. They are not Wikipedia, someone's personal blog, or a novel, unless you are actually writing literature reviews on specific novels. Okay? All right, let's keep going. So a literature review provides an overview of current knowledge, as I mentioned. So it's accepted, circulating, common knowledge that you can find typically in your online that is peer-reviewed or from your library. It also points out gaps in existing research. So a research gap is a question or problem that has not been answered by any of the existing studies or research within your field. So you may come up with a question and you may be searching for information to support your research question, and then you may realize that there's actually a gap, that you can't find this information, and this is really good to note on your literature review. Okay. All right, so the purpose of your literature review. So why do you need to write a literature review? So there are a few main reasons. So to demonstrate familiarity with the topic and the scholarly context. So this means that after you have searched and researched your articles and your books and everything else that you've gotten your information with, the demonstration part is to actually write about what you found and what supports your topic that you're going to choose. You're also going to present a theoretical framework with methodology. So you're actually going to let us know what methods you use to attain this information. And you're going to give us a framework of all the information that you actually found. All right? Okay. So you're going to show again how your research fits into this topic that you have chosen once you've decided on your research paper. All right, so conducting a literature review. So here are the steps typically of a literature review. These are the typical steps. So you're going to select a topic. So I'm not sure if your instructor or your professor has given you a list of topics or if this is something that you're going to figure out on your own. Then you're going to search the literature. So you're going to actually look for information that supports whatever you've decided to write on. Then you're going to develop the argument. So that means you're actually going to think of, okay, what can I pull out from the literature to support the argument? Again, you're going to survey the literature, right? So you're going to go through the literature, and how you do that is you're going to, again, find your abstracts, the books, whatever you're looking at, and you're going to look you're going to find the journals, and you're going to look through the abstracts to see what actually pertains to what you're writing about. Then you're going to critique it, and then you're going to write the review. So these are the steps of your literature review. So step one, searching for relevant literature. So defining your research topic. So let's say you've decided that you want to write something, you're not sure, but maybe on social media. I'm going to write about social media, but you need to narrow it down. So maybe effects of social media, but effects of social media, what effects? What am I thinking about? Well, maybe it could be social media and body image. You know, what are the positive body images that social media actually wants us to think of? You know, what is it actually portraying? And maybe it's social media amongst body image, and then you want to narrow it down a little more amongst Generation Z. So then you'll actually come up with your research question, which is, what is the impact of social media on body image amongst Generation Z? So you really want to narrow it down. And that's when you decide where you're going to go look for your research and your supporting documents. Okay. So again, this involves narrowing down your topic to a clearly defined research problem and associated questions. All right. All right. So identifying keywords. All right. So once you've defined your research problem and questions, you can come up with a list of relevant keywords to use in your search. So try to think comprehensively. Come up with synonyms and variants of key terms to make sure that you don't miss anything. All right, consider these words. You have the main words in bold, but equally important are the related terms listed in each one. So it's best to cast a broad net to avoid missing anything. I actually took out the bold. So, okay, you've decided that you're going to write about body image, social media, Gen Z. Well, here are some of the actual synonyms that you can use as keywords to find the information. So again, social media, maybe you're looking at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. And again, body image, a synonym for that would be self-perception, self-esteem, mental health, Generation Z, maybe teenagers, adolescents, youth. Okay. So where to search? So this is a link to your library catalog. Unfortunately, because I don't have a login, I was not directed to it, but I did take a picture of it. So these here, like for example, EBSCO, Emerald Insight Navigator, Sage Journals, these are all what we call search engines. And these will direct you to specific articles that pertain to the search engines. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so for example, EBSCO is pretty broad. So you can pretty much search most articles that are related to the humanities, to psychology, to sociology, anthropology through EBSCO, JSTOR, and Google Scholar. Project Muse is humanities and mostly social sciences. Again, Medline would be life science and biomedicine, and so on and so on. So it really, you really have to know, once you've decided what your research question is, then you have to decide, well, which one are you going to use? And you can use multiple, but again, some of these are very direct. So for example, Econolit would be a paper on economics. All right. So searching efficiently. I lost my notes. Okay, so we're going to use something called Boolean operators, which are and or not. So before I even start, there are a few tricks that you can use to search efficiently, and these are some of them. So let's say, for example, you go into you're now in EBSCO. I like EBSCO. I think EBSCO is pretty broad. So you're now in EBSCO and you want to search for, you've decided maybe you want to focus on women. In EBSCO, you would write women in social media, for example, not men. So any article that comes up would be focusing on women without focusing on men. You can write women and girls, women or men if you are searching for both, if you decide that you want to write on both topics, women and men. So these are capitalized terms, and or not. And again, they will allow you to exclude or require certain terms in the result. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. All right. So once you have found your articles, the best way to figure out what article would pertain to your research would be to read the abstracts. I don't expect you to go in and read the whole article or to even skim the article. Read the abstracts. Their abstracts are short summaries of the content of an article that allow you to get an impression of them without spending a lot of time reading what they may turn out to be an irrelevant article. Okay, so again, these will give you a short summary of what the article is about. And if you think that it's not going to give you enough information, you keep going. And you may have to read several abstracts. And then once you find the articles that pertain to your research question, you may have to read several articles, but that's what a literature review is all about. Okay, so again, searching efficiently. So check bibliography, references, and references for more sources. So what is a bibliography? So a bibliography is at the end of the article that you've chosen, or the many articles you've chosen. You will see a whole bunch of listings of who wrote every single article. So I want you to check these, and they will actually have more sources. So let's say you find an article that's really interesting that pertains to your question. If you go through that bibliography, you may find more articles that would pertain to your question instead of having to search blindly. So it's a good thing to check those bibliographies. So again, it's a list of sources, which are books, articles, and websites used to write an assignment. It usually includes all the sources consulted, even if they're not directly cited or referred to in the assignment. So again, it's also when you are reading your article, I want you to note reoccurring citations. So if they're writing and they keep citing an author over and over multiple times, more than likely you should look for those articles, because it's probably going to be similar, have similar information that could support your research question. Okay, finding sources for our research, for literature review. So again, what we've covered, well, we've covered defining the keywords. Again, use synonyms. Don't just use the one word or two words. Use a lot of words, because sometimes people write articles and don't actually use the keywords that you're using, and they may have supporting information. Again, find scholarly databases, which is what we were looking at. Use keywords to search. Check each source and list all your relevant sources. So we're going to talk about how to list your relevant sources, and it's very important that you do, because as you're going through all these articles, I want you to actually make a note of the articles that you will come back to support your paper. All right, so let's evaluate your sources. So I want you to ask questions about your sources. So when you're reading, I want you to ask, what question is addressed? Does it really align with your question? If it doesn't, keep going. What are the key concepts? So the concepts are ideas, impressions, notions, and thoughts. So what are their key concepts? Again, it's all, the secondary question is, does this align with my paper that I want to write? What are the theories? So what are the assumptions and methods that they have used? And you may look at their assumptions and think, maybe I want to tweak my paper, because maybe I'm finding more information about these assumptions than my paper. Or you can keep your original thesis question, and you can write about what you haven't found, and maybe talk about why you haven't found enough information. So what are the results and conclusions? So you are also going to have to write about the results and conclusions. So this is really important. All of these topics, all of these points are really important, but reading the results and conclusions, do they align with what you think the answers are? Because typically when you're asking a question, you probably already have an idea what your conclusions may be. So are they different? That's something you might want to write about as well. So again, how does it relate to other studies that you have read? And again, all the studies don't have to have the same conclusions, and it's actually, it would probably be a more interesting paper if you wrote about studies that had different conclusions asking the same question. And then what are the key insights and arguments of the paper? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of the research? So the author will typically write about what were the weaknesses and of the research. And so in other words, what typically those are what they could not find. So they may have been looking for this topic, they couldn't find it, they will write about that. And that's something that you are also expected to do. And then what they did find, and maybe they found more information that they were expecting to do. I would expect you to write about this too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I would advise you to follow the same format as what you're reading in your literature review. All right, here we go. So I was talking about taking notes. So taking notes is really, really important once you decide, or once you've found an article or a book or whatever has been peer reviewed that you think is really important for your literature review. So as you are reading, write down quotes, right? Write down all the quotes that you think would be relevant to support your research paper. Summaries of key points. So paraphrase your key points or summarize the key points in those papers. Write that down. Source your information. So the source of the information, where did you find it? What journal article was it in? What book was it in? What page? What year? And again, I'm going to show you how to do all of this, but I want you to make notes because this is really important to keep separate from everything else. Make sure you write your author's name down, the title and the journal name, and the year of the publication, and page numbers. So I want you to have this separately. Maybe you have a little copybook that you have this information in, because it's going to be a lot of information, right? Maybe you have a file that you do up in Word and you have that strictly only for journal articles that, or again, books, or any information that you think is going to be pertinent and that will support your paper. All right. So identifying themes, databases, and gaps. All right, what to look for. So when you encounter a particular article or book that is frequently cited, you can assume it's a pivotal publication for the subject, because if it's frequently cited, that means that the author probably is an expert in this field, okay? So we're also going to look for trends in the literature over time. So again, if you're looking at women, body image, social media for Gen Z, you're going to look over time. Well, let's look at maybe at the beginning of Generation Z, I think that was in the 90s, compared to what at the end of Generation Z, what is the trend? Let's say you focus on Facebook or Instagram. What were the trends in the early 90s compared to the early 2000s? Did it change? What sort of body image were they portraying? What was more acceptable? These are things that you're going to look for that are trends in the literature over time. You're going to look for key themes, debates, and disagreements. So again, you're going to look for these in your books and your articles, and it would be really great if you could apply some of these to your literature review, because a literature review is really trying to give us new information. And if you are able to apply this to your literature review, this is going to have the reader thinking about what's next, what's going to happen next. So again, a literature review is telling us about existing research, but if you can come up with some sort of debate or disagreement from what you've been reading, that would really make your literature review a little bit more interesting. Again, pivotal publications. So these are if you see the author being cited again and again, you want to use those publications. So if there are research gaps, so for example, let's say we're reviewing the literature on relationship between social media and body images. We notice the trend that most research in this area is focused on young women. We also note that the interest in visual aspects of social media is increasing over time. Well, where's the gap? If it's young women, what about the women that are maybe you want to look at, because you're focusing on young women, maybe you want to look at the gaps between the younger women from in Gen Z, the younger women compared to the older women in Gen Z. So you want to look at gaps. Are they focusing on older women more so than younger, or vice versa? Typically, it's younger women. Okay. So here's an example, another example of trends and gaps. What I just mentioned, most research focused on young women. Increasing interest in visual aspects of social media. So they were focusing more on the outward, how women present themselves compared to, educated women, what they may be thinking, what is trending with regards to what is important to women who are from that generation. So there may be a lack of research on platforms like Instagram and Snapchat. So you may be looking at all of these platforms. Again, Facebook is a much older platform compared to Snapchat. So you may find more information on Facebook than you would on Snapchat, and that's notable, and you may want to suggest why. All right, so this is a gap that your research could fill. All right, so let's talk about outlining your structure. Okay, so common structures are chronological, thematic, methodological, and theoretical. And you can have a little bit of each in your literature review. So you can, when you're referring to your, again, it depends on the type of literature review that you're actually writing. So something chronological, you're going to be looking at time. So this may be something that you would use in this literature review because you're looking at Gen Z, and you might want to look at, the whole generation from the beginning of Gen Z to the end of Gen Z. So you might organize it by time. You may see themes, really a lot of common themes. So you may decide, I'll organize it by time and theme. You may want to organize it by methodology. This is typically in the sciences. If you're in the sciences, this is something you would want to look at. But typically, if you're writing a paper that's in the humanities, you want to stick to time and theme. And of course, you want to organize it by the theoretical approach as well. Okay, I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. Okay, so let's write your literature review. This is what we've been waiting for. Okay. So the format of a literature review. So your introduction establishes the purpose of the review. The body directly discusses the literature, and the conclusion summarizes key findings of the review. So your introduction is going to tell the reader what this literature review is about, what the purpose is. The body, again, is analyzing the review, the literature, so you're going to directly discuss the literature, and then you're going to have a conclusion, which is summarizing the key findings. So you have three different parts of your literature review, and this is pretty much standard. All right, so here we go again. Organization of literature review. So again, your introduction is giving the reader a quick idea of your topic, the central theme or organizational pattern you will follow. The body contains your discussion of sources. So this is where you're going to throw in all those many sources, articles, and books that you've read. You're now going to throw in all of that to support your thesis or your research question. And then the conclusion and recommendations is what you have learned, what questions it raised for you, and how you plan to proceed. What seems to be missing. So again, this for me is the most, I wouldn't say important part, but it's the most interesting part for me, because it actually tells me, okay, you've put all this information together in the body. So tell me what you've learned. what is new, what you think is exciting, where are the gaps, what do you think that could stand to, you could probably do more literature on, so more reading on, more research on. So I think this is the most interesting part of the literature review. All right, so we are talking about standalone literature reviews. We're not talking about literature reviews that are part of a thesis. So again, the introduction provides the background on the topic. It provides a broad goal of the background, again, on the topic. It describes the objectives of the literature review. So what do you plan to write about? What is your intention or purpose of the literature review? So this is really interesting for me. When I wrote my thesis in grad school, I divided it in sections because I thought it was much easier to write and it sort of keeps you on track. So the body can be divided into sections. So here's some ideas. Again, we're keeping with the same theme, Generation Z, women, body image. So the first one, again, is the introduction. You always have to have the introduction. The second one could be maybe history of social media and women. The third one can be some data. The fourth section could be about the body image. So you're actually writing about, again, applying your sources to your argument. Oops, sorry. And then your conclusion. So here's the thing. This is also a really good outline for you. So if you decide, okay, this is what I want to write about, then you actually can use this to research, right? So that you're not researching and you're getting frustrated because you're researching all sorts of topics or the research is broad. You can actually narrow down your research. So again, this can be a great outline for you to use to research. And then again, the conclusion, you're going to discuss the overall implication, suggestions, allegations, and make suggestions for your future research. So just to go over this one more time, because this is really important. Your introduction establishes the purpose of the review. The body directly discusses the literature, and the conclusion summarizes the key finding of the review. All right. The exact content of each part will vary according to whether you're writing as a standalone paper or part of a longer text, which is a thesis, which I will be conducting in the next few weeks about how to write a thesis. So if you're interested, please register for that. And let's see. All right. So I want to talk a little bit in more detail about the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So in the body, your introduction has broad goals. It's providing background on the topic and defining the objectives of the literature review. Okay. You treat this like the introduction to most academic papers. You introduce the topic. You're going to emphasize its importance and clarify and clearly define your goals in conducting the current literature review. Okay, the body, depending on the length of the body, may be divided into sections, which is what we just talked about. And you can use subheadings and make them, or you can just use paragraphs. I would use subheadings because it keeps you on track. Okay, structure your paragraphs appropriately as you would in any paper. All right, your conclusion. So the conclusion again looks a bit different depending on your context. Your conclusion is of course at the end of your paper, and your goal here is to discuss the overall implications of your findings and make suggestions for future research on the basis of gaps and trends that you've identified in your review. So again, I'm going to go over this one more time, discuss the overall implications, suggestions, allegations, and make suggestions for future resource. I can't reiterate that enough. All right, so let's talk about citations, bibliographies, and references. Citation is what is the name of the person who wrote whatever research you're using to your finding. In a bibliography, sometimes called references, is at the end where you write out where you found it, the name of the journal, the year, the page number, everything. So let's go through this. So there are different ways to write these, and your professor will tell you which method they want you to use. Here in the States, we typically use something called APA, which is the American Psychological Association standard. There's also the MLM, AMA. So you find out which one you can use, you're supposed to use, and you can find a website for that. At the bottom of this is a website for APA, which I will copy and paste if you need me to in the comments afterwards. So here, let's go. So citation. So this is when you are writing, you're talking about Taylor. Let's say that's the author, Taylor. So you're writing what their findings are, and then you're after you've written their findings, that's when you're gonna write Taylor, comma, and in brackets, 2018, and that's if you have one author. But let's say Taylor wrote the article with two authors, right? Another author, so it's two authors. This is what it would look like, all right? And again, I'm not expecting you to memorize this. I just want to show you that there are differences in in-text citations that you need to be aware of, and you can go online when you're writing your paper and you can find out exactly how to write these. But again, I just want you to know that there are differences and you must cite. If somebody suggested something, if you're using somebody's research, you must cite that person's research. Otherwise, that is not good. It is, you don't want to plagiarize anybody's information, so you need to cite. And citing is good. It tells the person who's reading this that you actually did the work, that you actually read through all the information and you actually have good peer review. So here's another one where there are many authors. So instead of writing all the authors, you will write Taylor et al. And then again, you always write the actual year. And if it's a direct quote, so if you actually are quoting someone, so you're not paraphrasing what they said. So you're not saying, oh, Taylor said this, this, and this, but you're actually quoting them. This is how you're going to write it. So you're going to put the person's name, the year, and you're actually going to put the page number that you found it from. Okay. So again, this is in the body of your paper, you're writing, you're using all this information to support your paper. All right. So let's say, for example, you use web pages. So now we are going to talk about at the end. So this is in your bibliography where you have to write down where you found all this information from. So let's say you use Walker and Walker's first name is Anne. You're going to use, this is the way you would cite it. Again, I don't expect you to remember all this. I just want to show you that there are differences in the way you cite certain different sources. So this is citing web pages. So I'm just going to run through this with you. So you've got the last name, first initial, again, the year and the date. Then what is in italics is actually the title of the web page. where it was published in BBC News, and then that is the actual, after that is the web page that you can find it on. Now, let's say you found the information from a book. This is what it's going to look like. So again, very similar, but again, you have to make sure that you have all the information. And again, the publisher at the end, Simon & Schuster. So this is a little controversial because this just changed. Some professors will not want you to write up to 20 authors in the reference list. However, APA has changed it so that they're expecting you to do this. If your professor does not want you to do this, you can write Miller, TC, the date, and then you can write et al. Et al means there's a whole bunch of authors afterwards. So this is something that you might want to discuss with your professor if you decide that you're going to be using APA. Okay. So there's something called DOIs, which is a digital object identifier, and it's formatted as a URL. So if you find a journal article, at the end of the journal, if you find it online, at the end, it will have this digital object identifier that you can copy and paste. And if it's not a journal article that you have to just subscribe to, you will be able to find the article. So I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. So again, you may be citing an ebook. This is how it would look. You've got your DOI there as well. Again, remember, every different sources, all these different sources have different ways of citing. And that's really important that you cite them properly. All right, so here's an example of a journal article citation. So I actually wrote this with my husband. So this is actually the name of this is the journal article itself. So it's called Facebook and WhatsApp as Elements in Transnational Care Chains for the Trinidadian Diaspora. My family is originally from Trinidad, so I was really interested to find out about care chains. That's his name. He was the primary author, so his name comes first, Dwayne Plaza, and I'm the secondary author. So this is where you can find, so we are affiliated with the sociology department at Oregon State University in Corvallis. That's where I live in the United States. And then it states the correspondence, and it states the date that the article was received. So the date that we submitted it, when it was accepted, and the date it was published. All that stuff is not important. I just wanted to explain that to you. What is important is the citation below. So this is how you would cite a journal article. So you've got our names, the year, the name of the article, genealogy is the journal article, 3 is the chapter. Now, it was published twice in genealogy, so it was also published in chapter 2. I think it's page 15, and then there's the DOI. So if you were to just copy that DOI, you would find that online. All right, so here are some tips for you. So academic writing is formal and objective. Now, these are really, really important. So I want you to think about this, ask me any questions afterwards. When you are writing academically, you write not like how you speak. It is formal. So do not use apostrophe. So things like the words don't, ain't, aren't, wouldn't, shouldn't. Use the long form, would not, should not, are not. Do not, when you are referring to your author, do not refer to them in the first name. I've actually had a student write the first name instead of the last name. So if you were referring to me, you would say, according to Plaza. You would not say, according to Lauren. Do not use things like words like I feel, I think, I know, because you are using actual research. So it's not, you're not going to be using you don't have research right now. So you want to wait to give your opinion in the conclusion. And again, you don't really want to use the word I feel, I think, I know. You want to be a little bit more formal. You don't want to use run-on sentences. So again, each sentence has one meaning. You're not going to write sentences that have multiple meanings because that becomes a run-on sentence. Also, do not use slangs or idioms. And I wanted to give you some examples because I see those in my papers that I get from students. Words like dope, lit, flex, cool, sweet. I think you all know what those mean. I want you to use the real words, no slangs. Don't use idioms like feeling under the weather, raining cats and dogs, stabbed in the back, piece of cake. Now, I know those are probably not what you're going to use in your paper, but those are examples of idioms. You want to be really direct, really straightforward. Just state what you mean. And every time you have a new thought or meaning, it's a new sentence and probably a new paragraph. Here's some more tips. Use the subheadings to clarify your structure. We talked about that. So you're going to divide your paper so it will make your review more manageable to read, excuse me, and chunks the information. And again, it will help you to develop your paper because you can use that as an outline. That being said, you may find more information that you weren't even thinking about, and you may want to change that. So again, always use evidence. Don't make up something that you think. This is a literature review, you have to use evidence. Be selective, pick the most important points from each source. Paraphrasing is preferred to using many direct quotes. So if you're not sure what paraphrasing is, what it is that you're going to read what the person says and you're going to write it in your own words. So that is really preferred because then you're the person that's reading this, your instructor or professor, actually knows that you understand what that person is talking about. All right, so again, this allows you to use your own voice and show understanding of the research. Do not cite references that you have not read. Make sure to cite all your references. So this comes back to having that notebook, having that file in Microsoft Word, wherever you want to put it, to make sure that your in-text citations actually work with your bibliography. So if you have Plaza L, you have to make sure that you have Plaza L in your bibliography, and of course the extended bibliography to let people know where you found Plaza L information. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm here. I know it's a lot of information, so please, I'm here to answer your questions. So thank you again. I want to thank Shoco Wellness for having me.